knowing when to pivot something. So, not to just contradict everything I just said about being consistent, but I think there are things, there are concepts, there are actions to be consistent about, like always.
What's up, everybody? Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkos with another episode of the Big Picture Blueprint, where today we are really going to, it's a follow-up to a few of the recent episodes we've done, but we're going to talk about what it really takes to fail as a land flipper. We've seen over the years a lot of people that were pretty popular in the space drop off, and a lot of people get started, never get a deal, and never keep trying. And we'll try to actually go through a few different sects of the business and why that is, and what's making it so where people fail in this business so often. But before we kind of dive into things, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun showing you guys some really awful stuff we've seen in this business over the years. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. We have some big deals we're working through right now, some quiet titles, easements from neighbors, and surveys in difficult with difficult squatters on a property. But I'm excited. This is the best time to buy I've seen, I think, since I started in the business. So things are good. But yeah, I would add to everything you just said, people who did a couple dozen or a handful of really good deals and then fell off as well. There's a lot of those people that weren't failing, but they didn't do, or I should say, did do many of the things we're about to talk about today. And that's why they didn't continue to be profitable and ultimately had to move on to something else.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it might be, looking at our notes here, it might be beneficial to kind of talk about it in the opposite order of our notes, which is kind of the mindset around this business. And as you were talking there, I wrote down not knowing the vernacular or the jargon of the business. And I think that's one of the most important aspects that you need to focus on if you're planning on getting into any business, but land specifically, is just knowing what a land transaction looks like. I mean, you talked about surveys there, you talked about quiet title there, something that, before the show, you and I are talking about like it's commonplace, because it is. I've got, 5 quiet title suits going on right now. Dan, what the heck's quiet title? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's, as the name kind of implies, if there are or is some sort of claim against your property's title, maybe from a partial heir, maybe from the person that previously owned the property before it went to tax sale and was purchased via tax lien auction. I mean, it varies from state to state, but it's a legal process that essentially says, hey, an attorney does this. It posts publicly. You always have to post in the local newspaper. Hey, we are, I don't know how, like, speak now or forever hold your peace, essentially, right? And then if that goes through and no one objects, none of those potential stakeholders to that property object, then the judge issues all right, this is done. I don't know the technical jargon, and you get a clear title, and you can get title insurance and close on the property. And then those former owners or former potential heirs can never come back and say, hey, I own part of this. So that was a very poor way of explaining it, but I understand the concept.
no, and I think that it's important for everyone to study in this business before jumping in. Like, we're both people of action and think that, kind of, sew the parachute together as you jump out of the plane a little bit is something that needs to happen, as versus the people that sit on the sidelines for years in analysis paralysis. But I think just knowing some of the, typical jargon, surveys, what title is, what title insurance is, because, when I bought that portfolio, there's a bunch of properties where it's like, I don't have insurance on it because they ended up being quitclaim deeded to me because there is quiet title that needs, and I'm saying that with quotes right now, because I can quitclaim deed these properties to someone else and let them figure out the quiet title, or, quiet title suit that needs to happen. It adds some complexity, adding another chain on the link of title with me going in between. But there's certain properties where it's like, I don't know if it'll be worth it to do it. If it's actually going to add substantial value to it, of having clear title with certain things. So I think within that, treating this business like a side hustle is another note that I have here related to the mindset of operating an actual land business. And I think the people that treat it as a side hustle and then jump in full time, typically we'll stick it out for a certain amount of time. But if they don't make that mindset shift of like, this is a full-time job. Yeah, it's not a corporate job where you've got all these like useless meetings and all of these standard operating procedures that you need to follow that don't make any sense. But I do think that if you're not treating this like an actual business, and I know that most of our listeners have businesses and are operating businesses substantially, but shoot, I mean, we're still doing, weekly, performance improvement reviews of different processes that we're doing and different ways to do things better because, we are a corporation. Like we're building a very legitimate business. And if you're thinking of it as this like part-time side hustle thing, when the market shifts back to normal, which that's what's happening right now, like the market is going into normalcy, you're going to fail and you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, I'm glad you, real quick, just as a caveat, you said you're suing. A quiet title process is a quiet title suit. It is litigation, and I'm doing one right now, and we just talked it over with the attorney before he started it, and he had to identify those potential errors, and they will be named in the lawsuit, right? So it is a formal litigation. But anyways, moving on to everything else Mason just said. Yeah, if I was talking to a friend yesterday who I know sometimes listens to this show, and he didn't have a normal cadence for meeting with his acquisition team and doing coaching calls, and that sort of thing is essential in my mind. This is a sales heavy business, and you need to be training your people and having systems around that. I mean, I agree with what you said about you don't want to have endless, useless meetings and just bureaucratic processes that waste time. However, especially if your team's remote like mine is, you got to stay on the same page, and most people need that group social aspect of it, right? And so joking around a little bit, having consistent meetings, having a cadence for helping and coaching and training them is really, really important.
No, it is. And if you're not good at it, you need to figure it out pretty early. And that might mean, as we switch gears here a little bit to start talking about operations, that might mean you're not ready to hire that type of employee if you're incapable of managing that type of employee. It's something that we've said for years now on the show that our greatest regret was attempting to hire out sales too early. And I think that has shot us both in the foot over the years of if we had done what we, advise people to do, which is hire out the administrative burdensome tasks as early as you possibly can once you have documented procedures. And then, once you're in a really good position to shift your mindset to being a salesperson, to being a sales manager, then hiring that out, then you're going to succeed a lot. Because I think, there's certain aspects of the business where it's okay to like add a lot more volume and break the processes and break the systems and, stress test everything. But in terms of payroll and employees, I don't think hiring super fast, super early makes sense. I think a lot of people think that's what they need to grow. And it's because they're not straining themselves to a point where they could actually manage acquisitions. It's just me now managing acquisitions within my company. And I'm very selective with the deals that I'm doing and everything. But looking in hindsight, I feel like at the beginning, really what screwed me over for probably like a year was hiring the wrong first acquisitions manager. They did well for a little while, and then they got some deals that, I trusted them too much. And that's who I am as a person, is like, I trust the people I hire. And that burned me in the long run. And Dan, I know that you just brought on, at least a part-time administrative person. How's that kind of shifted how you feel about business right now?
Oh, it's been great. She's been really thorough and is good at details and organization and making nice spreadsheets as she's cleaning up a lot of our stuff, a lot of our spreadsheets and systems and SOPs. So that's been great. There's definitely data that I haven't aggregated that she's now doing. So that's been nice. It helps take some of the burden off of my acquisition guys and allows them to go do what they're good at, which is closing deals. So there's nice arbitrage there because of course it doesn't cost that much. So that's been great. And again, to your point, in hindsight, that should have been my first hire as well. Like you said, but anything else you want to say on hiring? Because okay. So we were talking about consistent meetings with your team. And I treat sending mail every week like brushing my teeth or eating every day. I do not miss it ever. And I think that that is one thing that's really benefited me in our business. And I think that's where a lot of people fail. I mean, I was thinking of one of our mutual contacts who did pretty well for a couple years in the business, closed a couple huge deals, and then ended up having to go and get a job. And I know he was a prime example of not keeping consistent with his marketing and taking his foot off the gas and then screwing himself 90, 180 days down the pipeline, down the road. So that's at the top of the list is ways to fail is be inconsistent with your marketing.
No, absolutely. Anytime that you feel like your pipeline is low, it's because you have not been marketing consistently. And you have to take a look at the mirror and see who you are as a person. Because for me, like Dan's on top of it it's like what you do it on Fridays of like every Friday, dude, I don't really work on Fridays. I don't know what it is, but I struggle to work on Fridays. And so for me, it's like I pull huge lists and then I set them up on drip campaigns for months at a time. Because I'd rather sit down and torture myself for like one day every couple months, than torture myself for like a little bit. And it's like not a healthy, procrastination nature. But it's a way that I've resolved it to keep deal flow going. And as the year, moves towards a close, like I think that's something that like I'm actively working on of, probably will take a day or two and just create a plan for all of 2026 of like, here's everything that I need to do. Here's everything that I need to accomplish. And then I sit down and, phones off, distractions off, and just for like 20 hours over like the course of 2 days, just knock out everything that I need to do for the rest of the year. Except my taxes, which always ends up being a last minute scramble because I'm a bad person. But I do think that if you are not marketing in your business on a consistent basis, whether you do it all and then drip it over a long period of time, or you're doing it consistently every week, you're going to fail. That's on the acquisition side. That's on the disposition side. It's not complicated. Make sure that you're working in the right market and that you understand the product and everything that we've already said. But like, you have to have your marketing channels moving consistently, because you don't know when people are going to respond. Like I got a huge lead this week. Like we'll see what happens. I never believe any lead's going to close until the papers are signed. But this lead will make me multiple six figures if we get it. And they responded to a postcard I sent 3 months ago that they'd been holding on to. And it's like, if I hadn't even had time to send them the second round of mailers yet, and they're responding. So just think about how powerful the compounding effect is if you are consistently marketing multiple channels every single, week, across multiple markets.
And this is true for everything. The follow-up, right? I mean, one of my guys revived an old lead this week from like a year ago. And because we're just absolutely unrelenting in all of our systems, that includes the follow-up. You won't believe how many deals we close where if you look through our CRM, you see LVM every couple weeks, a note saying left voicemail for a year. And we get so many deals that way. And we do this with our dispo posting. We do this with everything, even when it's not working for a time or it's slow for a time. There's always ebbs and flows where we'll sell a bunch of properties on Facebook and then we'll sell nothing for a little while. It's like, oh, well, why are we doing Facebook? Well, it'll start to produce again, I'm sure, at some point, right? And so just being relentlessly consistent with what works is important. And so, again, if you want to fail, be inconsistent with your follow-up and your dispo posting and everything, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, for people that don't necessarily have a huge budget for marketing to, spend, 500 to 5,000 a week or whatever it is on marketing expense, like, get that first list that you have, whatever it is you can afford, and hit them over and over in every channel, possible. And I think it's just the consistency more than anything, is what allows people to succeed. And the people that aren't being consistent are the ones that are failing. And as a corollary to both, the cost of labor, with hiring practices as well as marketing or not marketing enough, is I put on here ghost expenses. And that's something that, luckily, have enough money coming in to where some of these ghost expenses like aren't noticed, but it's not good practice. Where, I mean, shoot, I don't know if you remember last year, we had like a Teachable subscription that
Mm-hmm.
billed us for like $900, and we don't even use that platform.
Yeah.
Because it was just something that we subscribed to like a couple years ago, and then it, hit us again. I did cancel it this year, so we're good. But like that kind of stuff really actually starts adding up. And I'm not trying to sound like the boomer that's like, if you go get coffee and avocado toast, you're never going to be rich. It's these various softwares that you can get where everyone's trying to sell you a software that can range in price from $100 a month to multiple thousands a month. That if you start signing up for a bunch of stuff and, kind of like thinking that you're on to the next big thing and you're joining all these organizations and everything, you end up looking at your P&L at the end of the year and you're like, I had like 40 grand in just random expenses throughout the year, or 20 grand or 10 grand, where, depending on the number, it can be, I mean, that's a few more deals. And if you think about, as you are analyzing your profit and loss statement on, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, or whatever it is, you really have to look at what's coming in and versus what's going out. Cash flow is the only way that you can succeed in this business. We talk about it a lot, that if you don't have money coming in on a regular basis in some way, like you can't just wait for that next deal to close. I mean, it just takes too long and things go wrong and the market changes and all that kind of stuff. But you can control what you're spending your money on. And I think that expense management is absolutely crucial, because you can really, really burn yourself in the long run if you're not being responsible with that.
Yeah, I've seen that with friends of mine that have way too many softwares and they don't use most of them, and they don't use them consistently, and it's a lot of waste. And watch out. I mean, I've listened to companies and found, I think I've listened to Hermosi talk about this, where the billing once per year is a popular way of doing it, because so many fewer people cancel when they're billed once a year, right? It just shows up one month, you forget about it, and then it hits you every year, even if you're not using it, and people forget to cancel. So that's a good point. But something that relates to this that I think it's important to discuss, knowing when to pivot something. So, not to just contradict everything I just said about being consistent, but I think there are concepts, there are actions to be consistent about, like always marketing and always following up with sellers on a consistent cadence. But there might need to be changes in what you're marketing, or your marketing copy, or where you're pulling your data, or how you're following up with people, right? So how do you think about being consistent and not changing all the time, Mason, I'm asking, but changing as the market changes? Because I've certainly had to adapt. I mean, I redid all of my copy on my postcards this year, and that was tremendously, I got quite an ROI on that. So how do you think about that?
It's tricky, right? And Dan and I are hypocrites, so it's don't listen to us with anything. But I think it's what I've really tried to do here is just bash it into my head of what actually works. To me, like, my business has slowed down a lot, yet we've become a lot more profitable. And so I think that, I don't know, Dan, I don't know if I'm answering your question exactly, but like for me, like there are some creative ways of, different marketing material, the handwritten mailers that have worked pretty well. Becoming a broker has been huge for my business, of like this portfolio deal that I picked up that I thought was going to go okay is, going better than expected. And this came from a realtor deal. I think that, that's been one of the biggest kind of like pivots, I think, over the past year, that has just tremendously impacted my business in a really positive way, where I didn't stop doing anything. I just kind of added on to it and created like a greater sense of legitimacy. So I think that that's one thing, in addition to everything else that you're doing, that like if you stay consistent with, the marketing, all that kind of stuff that we, repeat over and over again, because we need to hear it as well. If you can do things that make your business far more legitimate, I feel like those kind of not exactly pivots, but add-ons, like bonuses of like you went and got Better Business accredited. You're really great about getting reviews for your business and getting testimonials and stuff like that, I think has led to, greater outcomes than anything else.
Yeah, add-ons. So I had an answer in mind of what I was going to say when I asked that question, but for me, it's been less major changes. I'm always doing the things that I know work, and then I layer on other things. So, easy example, something that's been helpful. I've told data on PropStream for many years. I haven't stopped doing that, but we iterate, we're hitting a list over and over again. Every few times now, we're also pulling the data on DataTree. And then I get some leads that I otherwise would not have gotten when I scrubbed the two, right? And so I'm stacking that on top of what I already know works. I'm hitting more sellers of land. Another example of this is deal size, right? I've been really intentional this year about upping our deal size, but I didn't stop doing the little deals. I think this is one I've seen cause people to fail where they, hey, it's so much just as easy to do 10x as 1x, right? That's stupid. It's not, but and so they stop doing the $10,000 flips that have made the money for years, and they market only for I want to make 100 or 200 on deals, and then they find out there's more complexity and often longer sales cycles with those, and then they go broke in the interim. And so we've kept doing medium to small deals and have layered on some of these 6-figure deals, and so that's working quite well. And so I think that in my mind is the crux, is doing the things that already, or the crux of what I'm saying is you don't stop doing the things that already work, you just layer other things on. And I think having some amount of time and budget allocated for testing along the way is useful. I'm always testing new copy, testing things on the side of what already works so I can find things to layer on. And all that to say, you do reach a point where perhaps it makes sense to let go of those $10,000 deals. The first like dozen land flips I did were really small, like $1,000 to $10,000 flips. And okay, once I consistently started making 10 to 20 grand per deal, I got rid of the couple $1,000 flips. So you do reach a point where you can, but you wait until you've really got that new thing going to do that. And so I'm going to keep doing the small deals in conjunction with these larger ones until I have a huge pipeline of 6-figure deals and they're closing consistently, right? And so I think that's key, not stopping what is working, just layering new things on.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I feel like, there's funny things that happen throughout, like, during this podcast as we're recording, I've got a property in Park County, and I've worked with this agent, for a good amount of deals out in Park County, and she's awesome. So it's part of the 17 lot portfolio deal that we picked up for $330 total. And, it's got trees on it, which is something that, made it really attractive. And like I projected 35 and we got an offer at 20, and then they countered a couple times, and then we got 2 offers. And then I'm looking at this one that we just got, and it's a cash deal, 38,369, which is 3,000 over asking price, closing the 25th of November, and we're recording this on the 4th. So like a 3-week close. And I hadn't done any deals in Park County in a while, and this was more a part of a portfolio. And it's funny where it's like I got tired of doing those ones, and I kept doubling my money every time I did it. Like even on the bad ones, I'd make 80% cash on cash return on each deal that I've ever done out there, at a minimum, and sometimes 300%. And then I look back and I'm like, why have I not been doing this over and over again? And so it's sometimes nice to just have a reminder that what has historically worked will usually continue to work, whenever it's like a specific buyer for that asset class. But, there's other markets, and, we'll probably move the conversation to this point, here pretty soon, where markets have fallen off and you can really do bad deals. And I think doing bad deals is what kills a lot of people in this business. I've lost money on plenty of deals, and thank God I'm still here. But you do a few of the wrong ones, like we'll show you guys here in a second, that can really screw you over.
I'm glad this is a good pivot, because this is something that changes. One constant has been changing market cycles, and I've watched There's a few markets I've already watched go from sleepy to hot, back to sleepy, and I've actually seen multiple cycles of that in a few places. And so I have had to shift from one market to another multiple times, or stop doing business in a certain place for a while. And that was a big part of this year. Is I've almost stopped marketing in Florida, almost entirely, which I'm going to really try and just pick that back up going after prime lots, because I think there's an opportunity for buying at more of a discount than it has been for a while, but it's hard to sell right now. So a great example of this, Mason, I know we want to talk about bad deals and what not to do there. So I'll use a real example. We were going to potentially fund a deal this month or end of last month, and it had been submitted to us 3 or 4 months ago. And it's November of 2025. The market has, in most places, slowed quite a bit this year and continues to do so. At this point, I don't know if it's seasonality or if it's just would be happening regardless. Only time will tell. But we were going to fund it, and it took forever to get the abstract back. And in that time, new listings came on the market. And one of the main things that was appealing about this deal was that there was almost no inventory, and the few lots that were comparable listed were just astronomically high, like 50% above comp. So we're thinking, okay, there's demand here. This is a place that certainly has demand. We'll be able to move this thing pretty darn quickly at the high end of comparable sales because there's nothing else available. Well, a couple more lots popped up for sale, very similar to the one we were about to buy, at the low end of comps. And they'd been sitting a little bit, not that long. We weren't sure, but they'd been sitting a little bit. And so my gut, I was kind of taking the lead on this one. Mason and I were doing it, but I was taking the lead. And my gut told me, don't do it, because I've made this mistake where we got to close the closing table maybe after a probate or some protracted period of time, and I closed when I felt like something had changed and I shouldn't have. And I can tell you, I have some lots sitting with a lot of cash in them that I closed that I shouldn't have. And so we said, nope, we're not going to buy this. It's not terrible. I think there's a decent chance we would have made a little money, but there's also a chance it would have sat for 6 to 9 to 12 months and we would have lost a bit of money after wasting a year of our time. So not buying okay deals right now and only buying really good deals where you really know what you're doing, I think is essential right now.
I totally agree. And I think it's really important to trust your gut whenever you have enough experience to have gained any instincts in this business. Because sometimes first deal I ever did, like, I don't know if I would do that deal now. Like, it was a weird one. And I think I got lucky, and I think it was the timing of everything. But I do feel like anytime the margins are thin, you just shouldn't do it. And the lower the price, the worse it is if there's thin margins, because just there's certain fixed costs associated with every transaction that you're going to have that make it so where you can't have these, buy for 10, sell for 15 type of deals, where you could have a buy for 100, sell for 150 type of deals all day. But I feel like, that Oklahoma one, like, as we kept looking at it, and that's what's funny is, like, your underwriting, whenever you look at a deal, 3 months later, it might be very, very different. There's certain markets where, back in the day, I say back in the day, like, 3-4 years ago, builders would be building a home and, their price as they're doing the construction keeps going up and up because the market keeps going up and up. And that's something that isn't usually happening with land and isn't usually happening with a lot of the property, that we're dealing with. And sometimes on deals, like, you've got to take the bird in hand versus the two in the bush. Whenever you're an owner and looking at selling, you're going to get offers that might not be super attractive, but you have to really look at the time value of money of, it might be okay taking a, 1 or 2 or 3K haircut on a deal that if you could go put it into another deal or have that money start working for you in a better way, it's worth it. But
actually, I'm glad you said that, because it brings up the point of seasonality and just being aware of seasonality being a normal thing and how much this affects what you're able to sell and at what price. We have 2 spec homes that I had built this year that are sitting on the market, and it's so frustrating because I would bet a pretty substantial amount of money if it were April of next year, we'd be able to sell them around what we listed them at. But it's not. It's November the 4th, and things are slow. It doesn't help that the government's shut down, just adding to general hesitation amongst a lot of people in many markets. But they're sitting, and so I'm probably just going to have to refi and rent them, and or just take a big haircut and not make nearly as much. And so that's just another thing coming out of this crazy market we're in for years is seasonality is normal, and be prepared for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and I'll share my screen for those of you guys, watching on YouTube, and, for those of you that aren't, we'll walk through it. But I feel like this was like a good example of someone that maybe, thought they had a decent deal. It feels like someone that maybe was in the house flipping space that got into land, is kind of the general sentiment of this deal. But it's a property in Port Charlotte, Florida. This deal was submitted to us last summer, July of 2024. They wanted to just wholesale the property to us. They wanted to close ASAP. Had a contract price of $25,000 is what they were asking for. So my guess is they had it under contract for a little bit less. $500 in acquisitions cost is probably a little bit low. And they, we're saying that they could, it would sell for $30,000. Which that's not accounting any additional closing costs or any realtor commission, which is what our business model is. And the comps that they, provided were not accurate or anything like that. But I think that this deal is an interesting one because they wanted to wholesale it to us at $25,000. And in their mind, they thought we could make $4 or $5 grand, which is like a 25% margin, which isn't horrible, for a lot of business. But this deal was listed on the market this fall at $19,999, and then removed at $18,999. And I think that, here's the property, close to a canal, Port Charlotte, Florida. I haven't really done any business out there, Dan. You know the market better than I do. But I feel like this is the type of deal that I see submitted to us so often, where there's nearly no margin, because realistically, you're looking at, on the soft side, 8% of the sale price. So you net 92%. So all in at 25.5. I mean, you're maybe making $2 grand on that if it, works out the way that they said. And that's assuming you're lucky and assuming you're able to move it very quickly. But I feel like, and maybe we can think about it a little bit here of why do people submit deals like that to funding? And do they actually think it's a good deal? Is it ignorance or is it malicious? They're just trying to make a dime in any way that they possibly can, or, really what's going on? Because we see this all the time. Like, on a weekly basis, people like submitting deals to us for funding that there is no margin. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. Are these newbies? Are these people that are house wholesalers trying to get into land? I don't know. What are your thoughts on these people?
Yeah, this is so to the overarching point. This is a great way to fail by just burning your reputation with everyone by trying to wholesale deals with illegitimate comps and just dishonesty all around about what the property can be used for. And so I don't know, Mason. I'm not sure. I think a lot of people just rationalize because they so badly want to make money that, oh, no, their best case scenario is going to work out, or they're going to find a way to make it work. And so in their head, they're not doing anything wrong. But I had 2 deals sent to me in Pueblo West in the last month that one of them was just a piece of shit. And I knew what the lot was immediately because it's a piece of crap and it's just not really developable. It's not economically viable. And I told the guy very gently, I was super friendly because it was just a friend of a friend that was referred to me. And then I see him marketing it with the same claims and plan that he had that he sent to me, which is again not viable. There's not the utility capacity, and it's just, I don't know. I had another one that was sent to me, and this guy took all this time to put together a big pitch deck, and it just was essentially it's in the single family section of Pueblo West, and he was talking about rezoning it and using it for a multifamily project, which is just, there's so many things wrong with that. even if you have a multifamily lot, building multifamily there is almost impossible, let alone on a single family parcel that doesn't have the utility capacity in the northern. Like, it was just idiotic. And I explained this to him very gently, and then I see him wasting his time too, marketing it as if that's feasible to other people. And so I don't know. I'm probably I'm probably a little more pessimistic. I think a lot of these people just don't give a fuck and they're just trying to make money, even if it screws someone else over. And so if someone wants to wholesale me a property, I already distrust them strongly.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the funny thing is that I'd be happy to work with a wholesaler if they brought us a good deal. And we could be a pipeline, for you forever, as an investor. But, you have to understand the numbers. And I think the lesson here, obviously be honest and everything like that. And I like to assume ignorance rather than malice, but you see it enough, you get jaded like Dan and I do when you get, 2 to 5 deals submitted to you a week and they're all pretty horrible. That's part of the reason we put out so much content, is to hopefully help people learn how to be better, because we'd love to work with you, if you're actually pretty decent at this business. But the moral of it, from a tactical point of view, is when you're underwriting a deal, your property's not special. It's just not. You need to be extremely conservative with what the comparable sales are. And I know there's markets in the Southeast and everything like that where there's 5 million comps, but in a lot of the places where a lot of people are doing deals and they find comps and they say, well, look, mine's 5 acres and I've got it, I think it'll sell at 100,000. Look at this 4-acre one that sold, for 90,000. But, the 5-acre lot is way at the back of the neighborhood. The 4-acre one has trees and is at the front of the neighborhood. And maybe it has a seasonal creek and all these other factors in it. And so you have to really kind of, trying to go full circle here. You have to really, really understand the product and what makes land desirable, because the value of the property is in what people will pay for it. And that's it. No matter what you think and no matter what the comparables say, it's good data to have. But if you've got a lot of comparables and you can price it at 80 to 90% of what other stuff is selling for, and underwrite the deal in a way that, hey, here's my takedown price of this is the max budget that I have for land, and then stick to it, you're going to be extremely successful in this business. I think that lack of conservative underwriting is what kills more deals than anything, because I have projects where it's like, we're sitting on the market for a really long period of time because we know that it will sell at that price eventually. But it would be really nice to unlock that capital and go back and, do it over again. And it's because we didn't buy right that we're not able to do that. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to take a haircut, or my investors can't take a haircut on this particular deal. So we're just going to hold out, and that's okay. Like, some deals, it might take 2 years. And if you make a couple $100,000 on a deal that took 2 years, that's fantastic. But I think the moral here is be extremely conservative in your underwriting, get as many data points as you possibly can, and then compare all of the data points within that set to see how similar your property is.
Agreed. No, I think that's well said. One of the last points that came to mind as you were talking there, just looking through our notes, is counting your chickens before they hatch. It will get you in trouble, right? I mean, we've ranted about people talking about projected profit on social media all the time, and so we don't need to do that again. But Mason and I have both had many, many, many deals where we thought for sure it was going to make X, whether the market changed or the government changed the laws, or we were just wrong. It doesn't always happen. So even when you're an expert, you've been doing this for years and years, you just can't count anything till it's closed. And so my point here, I think more than anything, is you just need to account for more uncertainty around accounts receivable than you think, and have more cash set aside for your operating expenses, for your personal expenses, and just to keep things going and bridge potential gaps or market slowdowns or anything and everything that can go wrong, more than you think. That's the main point here.
Oh yeah, and it's tactical, but it's also psychological, because if you're cash heavy and you're not worried about how you're going to pay your mortgage or whatever next month, and you stick to your guns with your underwriting of deals, the marketing that you're doing, and the type of deals that you're doing, it's okay if a few months go by and you don't get anything new. Because sometimes, like, when it rains, it pours in good ways and in bad ways. And if you're consistent with everything, then it's going to end up working out. And I think from a sales, psychology of sales standpoint, if you're you finally get a call back from a seller, they're interested in selling, and you offer them this, and then, you offer them 20, the lot's worth 40, you're going to double your money, you're saved, your business is saved or whatever. And they come back with 23 grand, and you're like, and you just start going back and forth, and then you end up, going up to like 25 grand or something on a property that you couldn't pay more than 20 grand because the seller could tell that you're desperate to buy it. And then when that desperation starts leaking into the conversation, you're going to lose the negotiation. And I feel like that right there is, just like an additional thing related to all of this, going back to the mindset of it, of if you need this deal, if you need one deal to save your business, you might not be in the right business, because one deal can go awry so easily and so quickly in the real estate industry, whether it's a house or an apartment or a piece of land.
Yeah, that's so true. To my point about having extra cash, just having multiple layers of a backup plan for when things go wrong, because they will, and for when things that you couldn't have anticipated go wrong, which they will. And so just having more of a cushion in every way, both in your expenses, in your savings, in your marketing plan, everything, having more of a cushion than you think, I think is essential. And so one last thing that I can't believe we got to this point without saying, that kills so many people, and I think is applicable to real estate broadly, is just short-term debt. Don't put short-term debt on land if you don't already have the refinance or just your own cash available to cash out the debt available, because that'll kill you.
Oh yeah. Yep. And I learned my lesson. Was that last year or 2 years ago at this point?
That was a year ago. You were in a bad place a year ago. Yeah.
I did pay, I think it was around 800,000 in cash on deals that I had short-term financing on. And thank God it worked out. And those deals, for the most part, one of them I took a decent loss on, but the other one's paying me, every month. And another one is, I think, gone at this point, sold and made the money on it. But yeah, I mean, that was a position where it's like, dude, I don't know if I want to be in this business anymore. And it's because we didn't take our own advice, because I fell in love with the deal and I thought it was going to work out, and incompetent brokers and everything that went wrong with a few deals in a row there. And luckily I had enough going right to make it worth it. But if you ever let emotion come into your business decision-making, it's just not going to really work out for you. And I think you will fail as a land flipper if you're an overly emotional person when it comes to business.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that's a good point as well. But yeah, the short-term debt can really kill you. Long-term fixed rate debt can be a great thing, leveraged against good assets. I'll take as many 30-year mortgages as I can get at a fixed rate against nice rentals. But short-term debt, yeah, you got to watch out for that. But anything else you want to say, Mason?
No, I don't think so. We want anyone that's in this business or in a similar business to be able to succeed. And we hope that there are some nuggets of information, whether you have been in the business for years or you're just getting started, that it's a beneficial reminder. I think that's something that is great about this show for Dan and myself as we record these, is it's just a reminder, look in the mirror and make sure that you're happy with the business that you're operating. And it's the end of the year as this episode is coming out. So we're coming up on, over 2 years of the Big Picture Blueprint. We're grateful for all of you guys that are listening. But no, I think this is a good leaving off point. So this is Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkos with the Big Picture Blueprint, signing off.